Okay, everybody, let us continue with this one. Okay, this is part 2. Early in the afternoon, Dahlia paid a visit to Irma at her salon. She gave a knock on the door and entered. Irma had just finished with a client who was on their way out. Thanks so much for yesterday, Irma. I brought you these. I thought they could be your dinner tonight. Dahlia placed a generously sized parcel of ham and sausages on the table in the reception area. Oh, thank you. Those look great, but there's way too much. Why don't you eat with us tonight? That's kind of you, but I have some work stuff to sort out. I'll come another time. Just then, Dahlia happened to catch a glimpse of her reflection in one of the salon's mirrors. Her thick, dark brown hair was tied up in a simple fashion. Her face looked so tired, not a hint of makeup to brighten it. Even her black-rimmed glasses were dull. It was a very gloomy-looking young woman who stared back at her. Irma, do you have any more clients today? No, that was the last one. Well, would you have time to do me then? Of course. What are you thinking? Let's chop it short, and I want my natural color back. Dahlia's natural hair was an intense, rich red. It was the same color as her mother's. She'd heard through, though she had no way to see that for herself. Hair like a beautiful sunrise, like the darling crimson clovers. Dahlia remembered the maid who'd sometimes look after her when she was a child, praising her so. In truth, she wasn't all that fond of the color. When she was little, she wanted sandy blonde hair like her father's. Her eyes were the same color as his, and she thought her hair ought to match, too. Gosh, it's longer than I realized. How short do you want it? I like to tie it back when I'm working, so just long enough for that. When Dahlia unbound her hair, she found it fell halfway down her back. She hadn't realized how much it had grown either. When she was seated comfortably in one of the salon's chairs, Irma began carefully brushing her hair. You got a little bit of a curl in it, so if we just take it to just above your shoulders, would about here be okay? Perfect, I'm in your hands. Irma nodded, then put a white cape around Dahlia and began to cut her hair. Irma's skill was evident in the smooth and dexterous motions of her hands. For a few moments, the only sound in the room was the light snipping of her scissors. You've been growing out your hair ever since you got engaged, haven't you? Tobias wanted me to. He said my hair would look nicer, long, and dark. Dyeing it at home was getting to be a hassle, though, with how long it's gotten. Your natural color's lovely, though, and it suits your skin tone. It's just that red can look so gaudy. It's not the first time I've heard that, you know. The more I hear it, the more it sounds like a pretext for something else. Yeah, essentially he's like, dang it, what was the other book I've been reading? The mushroom one, where she was trying to hide her appearance and everything, making herself not stand out, because her ex-fiance, told her to. So this is essentially the same situation. Yeah, those kinds of people are awful. Irma frowned as she kept on cutting without pause. Strand after strand of Dahlia's long hair floated down onto the polished wooden floor. I have clients come to me quite often after getting engaged or married, asking me to tone down their color. 9 times out of 10, it's the husband who puts them up to it. Why? I suppose they want to make the right impression on their in-laws or people at work, perhaps. That's what they often say, but I think the real reason is something else. Control. It's about being able to control their spouse. Irma stopped for a moment, meeting Dahlia's gaze in the mirror. Her earrings, a pair of stones in a rich reddish-brown color, glinted in the light. They were the same shade as Marcello's eyes. A man who wants to dull down his wife's appearance is just showing his insecurity, don't you think? Is that so? Men like that think that if she looks too beautiful, then someone else might steal her away. If you ask me, a real man would have more confidence in himself and a lot more faith in his lady. Maybe you're right, Dahlia replied, nodding. However, she couldn't apply this thinking into her own situation at all. Tobias never once seemed concerned about Dahlia being taken from him. I think this might be a control issue on his part, for your situation, essentially. She doubted he even have minded that much if she had been. Once Irma had finished cutting, they went over to the sink in the corner of the salon. Irma prepared some hot water with a water crystal, and a fire crystal, dissolved in it a product for removing hair dye, and soaked Dahlia's hair in the solution. After that, she thoroughly washed it with shampoo twice, then rinsed it clean. Next, she combed a perfumed oil through the hair for shine before finally using a magical dryer powered by air and fire crystals. Soft, silky waves of rich red hair blew around Dahlia's shoulders. Dryers were invented by Dahlia's father when she was a child. To be more accurate, they were a joint accomplishment between father and daughter. Back when she was just beginning her studies of magic, she had come up with a design for a small device that would blow warm air using air crystals and fire crystals. She'd made it in secret, hoping to surprise her father, but due to her inexperience, she'd had little idea of how to calculate the device's output. Thus, the result had been a compact but highly effective flamethrower. Even now, she could clearly recall her normally mild-mannered father's fury when she'd accidentally scorched the workshop wall. After her scolding, she tearfully explained her design and what it had been intended to do. Not only had he understood, but the pair had spent the rest of the day and night refining the design, having a whale of a time as they experimented. By the next morning, they had created a perfect hairdryer. She finally remembered the maid coming in that morning and giving her father quite a tongue-lashing for letting his daughter stay up all night long. There, that suits you so much better. Thanks, Irma. It's so light. It feels great. The red-haired young woman in the mirror smiled. It had been 2 years since she'd seen her vivid natural color. It would take a little time to get used to it again. I don't have any more bookings this afternoon, so why don't we have some coffee? Dahlia happily agreed and followed her through to the kitchen. Are you sure you don't need any help with the unpacking and everything back home? No, that's okay. There wasn't all that much to begin with, said Dahlia as she accepted a cup of coffee. She never took sugar, but today she added just a little. Marcelo told me what happened yesterday. I'm sure everyone else has said the same thing, but you absolutely made the right choice. They probably don't know about him showing up in the morning to get her bracelet back. Yes, I think so too, Dahlia answered without reservation. You know, he turned up at the tower this morning. Who? You mean... Oh, I don't even want to say his name anymore, so what did he want? Did he come to his senses and apologize? He didn't beg you to take him back, did he? No. No, he came to ask for my engagement bracelet back so he could give it to his new fiancée. What? All of a sudden, Irma's coffee and her table were in a terrible state. Are you serious? As the incandescent Irma choked on the coffee she'd inhaled, Dahlia hurried to pat her back. I'm sorry, I should have waited until you were finished drinking. It's fine, never mind that. What the hell was he thinking? What would he even do with your bracelet? Take the stones out and put them in a new one? I think he means to use it just as it is. Said there wasn't time for him to make a new one. What, is he planning on marrying her today? Actually, what am I saying? Probably. I can't believe he'd try to do something so stupid. Wait, Dahlia, you didn't give it to him, did you? I did, along with the earrings he gave me for my birthday. Oh, but you should have sold them. You could have gotten a good price for those. Irma was right. She could have sold them for a tidy sum. Money was important, especially now. She had no family, no plans to marry. While she was gainfully employed, the cost of materials and research involved in magic tool-making were quite steep. Yeah, she should have sold it as soon as she got out of that office the other day. And then she could have just told him, sorry, I don't have them anymore. And he wouldn't have been able to do a thing about it because she's allowed to keep it after that happens, essentially. You could never have enough savings. It was just that at that moment, all she'd wanted was to sever her ties with Tobias as quickly and cleanly as possible. I just didn't want anything to do with him anymore. That was all I could think about. I know it was probably a bit of a waste. Well, I can't say I blame you. I don't particularly want to see his face again either. And you don't need him anyway. You're a fine craftswoman. If you keep working as hard as you have been, you'll be just fine. Irma fetched herself a fresh cup of coffee and sat down. As she dropped in some sugar and swirled it around with a teaspoon, she glanced Dahlia's way with a slightly forbidding look in her eyes. Hey, Dahlia, what do you say we spread the story around a little? If he'd teach that man a lesson. If I mentioned it to my clients, it'd be all over town in no time. I mean, yeah, ruin his reputation. The fact that he was cheating, most likely, would definitely ruin his reputation, because I'm assuming that's not a very good thing to do in this world, essentially. Don't, Dahlia replied firmly. I don't need everyone knowing I had someone like that for a fiancé. I couldn't stand to have them all pitying me. No, I'm putting this whole affair into my dark past. Your dark past, huh? I like it. That expression from Dahlia's previous world seemed to translate well here. Irma smiled as she poured Dahlia a second cup of coffee. You're right, Irma continued. The sooner we forget him, the better. You'll find someone who deserves you. I just know it. I hope so. I'd love to see that romance blossom. While Dahlia appreciated her friend's kind words, she couldn't quite bring herself to nod in agreement. Finding love, getting married, somehow she couldn't see herself doing these things anymore. On the contrary, they sounded like a huge headache. I'm starting to wonder if I really need to. I'm more interested in my work, to be honest. You do love crafting your tools, don't you? I do. I don't think I'd mind devoting my life to my craft. Once I'm old and gray, I could take on a young apprentice and train them so they could surpass me one day. Something like that doesn't sound so bad. As your friend, I know I should probably try to talk you out of it, but you're right, that doesn't sound bad at all. The two friends continued to laugh and chat together until it was almost dark. Okay. A night from the beast hunters. The next morning, Dahlia set off to gather materials in the forest outside the royal capital. Her plans weren't ambitious. She only intended to gather some stones and sand close to the highway. She wasn't expecting to find any treasure. The thought of Tobias turning up again prevented her from getting settled into the tower. She didn't need any acquaintances quizzing her about the breakup either. She was unlikely to meet anyone out in the forest, and a day in the fresh air and quiet would be a nice change of scenery. Since she would be going alone, she had decided to splurge a little on a sturdy enclosed carriage with metal doors drawn by a specially trained Sleipnir. The rental fee was understandably high, but Sleipnirs were extremely useful travel companions, able to fend off any attacking marauders or small monsters with a single kick. The carriage featured a door behind the driver's seat that allowed you to quickly hide inside. Then all you had to do was blow the whistle kept inside the carriage, and the Sleipnir would draw you back to the city even without anyone at the reins. You couldn't ask for a better escort. When she'd gone to book the carriage, there had just been a cancellation, and she grabbed the opportunity without hesitation. The sky above was clear and beautifully blue. The birds sang their melodies, blending into one another, while the trees swayed gently in the breeze. The road into the forest was a little rocky in places, but in decent condition otherwise, and more than wide enough for the carriage. Dahlia felt her decision had been well worth it. She had driven the Sleipnir very cautiously at first, but the animal was no trouble whatsoever. So smooth and comfortable was the journey that it almost felt as though it had sensed her apprehension and was trying to put her at ease. From what she had been told, it was very rare for monsters to appear in the area. Even so, she had prepared for the worst, just as her father had always taught her to. In her pocket, she had special magic crystals that could be thrown at monsters to repel them, and she had put on some protective clothing. These measures would be just as effective against human attackers, too. After glancing around to check that the coast was clear, Dahlia took out a bottle of white wine from her bag and brought it straight to her lips. She took several gulps before letting out a hearty sigh of satisfaction. Although she knew it was an extremely unladylike way to drink, she had always wanted to try it. She hadn't realized how much stress she'd piled up over the last few days. Only now did she feel like she could finally breathe easy. If she continued a little farther down this road, she could reach a river flanked by wide, flat pebble beaches. She'd collect some stones there, then perhaps take an early lunch while enjoying a pleasant view of the river. But no sooner had she thought this thought than a flock of birds in the trees nearby screeched and took off all at once. The Sleipnir whinnied and stopped in its tracks, lifting its foremost right leg as it stared into the trees. The gesture suggested wariness. There was a loud rustling from deep in the thicket on the right-hand side of the road. It wasn't some little bird or rabbit making that noise. It was a much larger animal, or perhaps even a monster. Dahlia gripped one of her throwing crystals tightly in her hand. A road. Finally, croaked a raspy voice. A moment later, its owner stumbled out of the bushes. They were human, and they were covered from head to toe in blood. "Are you all right?" "Water, please," the man begged, kneeling on all fours. His voice was so hoarse that he could barely form words. Dahlia hurriedly grabbed her water skip from the carriage and brought it to him. "Drink this." The man bowed his head in thanks as he took the water, gulping the entire contents down without even pausing for breath. "You're a lifesaver. Thank you." He promptly collapsed on the ground. His armor's breastplate was intact, but the shoulder and back pieces had been ripped apart. The clothes he wore underneath were also in tatters, and there were several horribly deep gouges in his left shoulder and upper arm. His entire body was drenched in crimson. "Are you okay? What happened to you?" "I'll be fine. It's mostly monster blood. Got separated from the others on the mountain. Been walking 2 days." He managed to lift an arm to point up at the peak of a snow-capped mountain. All Dahlia could think was that he was incredibly lucky to be alive. He'd mentioned others, so perhaps there were a party of adventurers. "Wait there a moment." Dahlia ran back to the carriage and retrieved a potion, pouring it into a wooden cup. "Here." "Thank you." The man accepted the cup and took a mouthful. His eyes widened in surprise. "Is this a potion?" "Yes, I've opened it now, so please drink it all down." Potions didn't keep for long once unsealed. If he'd known what it was, he might have tried to refuse. That was why she'd poured it into a cup. One bottle of this potion cost 5 gilt silver, about 50,000 yen in Dahlia's estimation. Rather expensive for a bottle of medicine, you might think, but its effectiveness in healing wounds made it worth every penny. Or worth every coin. You couldn't put a price on a life after all. "I'm so sorry. I promise to repay you once we return to the capital." He bowed his head in thanks before swallowing the rest of the contents. As he took several deep breaths, the wounds in his upper arm began to close before Dahlia's eyes as though time were turning back. It was an extraordinary sight. I cannot thank you enough. I feel so much better. While there was certainly much more life in his voice, with all that blood covering his face, it was impossible to tell whether his color had improved or not. Forgive me, I haven't yet introduced myself. My name is Wolfrid, and I am a knight of the Order of Beast Hunters. I am but the youngest son of a minor noble, so please call me Wolf. Wolf? Not only a knight, but a beast hunter at that. All kinds of monsters roam this world. They were generally hunted by adventurers, who made a living by selling the meat, skins, bones, and so on through the Adventurers Guild. However, when they began to pose a threat to human settlements, such as when their numbers grew too large, or an especially strong or large monster was discovered, then the Royal Order of Beast Hunters was dispatched. Attacks from packs of monsters or larger than normal ones were simply thought of as another kind of natural disaster in this world. It went without saying that taking on these ferocious beasts wasn't for the faint of heart. The Beast Hunters' ranks included many of the kingdom's most formidable warriors. I'm Dahlia, just a citizen. I'm a jack of all trades. Dahlia deliberately cut her name short to make it sound more like a man's. She had draped her father's coat loosely around herself today, and she wore a black hat that completely hid her hair, her black-rimmed glasses, a special choker that lowered her voice, and a gauze scarf wrapped around her neck. It was just a precaution. A woman on her own in the forest had to be vigilant. Among nobles, it was common practice for men to avoid sharing a carriage with a single woman. Dahlia decided it best not to reveal her gender to the knight. Her priority for the moment was to get him back to the capital, and quickly. I'm terribly sorry to trouble you, Dahlia, but if you're heading to the direction of the capital, may I ride with you? I'll see that you're repaid as soon as we reach the castle. Of course, please climb on. Thank you very much, I'm in your debt. Wolf blinked several times, then rubbed his light brownish eyes. Upon closer inspection, Dahlia could see that the whites of his eyes looked very bloodshot. Do your eyes hurt? They've been like this since that beast's blood got into them. The fact that the potion hadn't healed his eyes meant that they weren't injured. Most likely it was some kind of poison in the blood or an infection. The blood covering his face must have been running into his eyes. You better wash them as soon as possible. I've heard of monsters causing blindness before. It'd be 12 gold at the temple to have that healed. I would rather avoid it. There were doctors in this world, but serious injuries were generally treated by temple priests. Treatment wasn't free. The cost increased with the severity of the condition, but if you could afford it, there was very little that couldn't be cured. There's a river nearby. Would you like to wash there? Yes, please. When Wolf stood up, Dahlia fully became aware of his considerable height. He looked rather slim, but that was likely just because he was so tall. Around 190 centimeters, Dahlia guessed. 190? How much that is that? Let me know, please. In like feet. I'm sorry it's a little cramped, but here, come sit beside me. Dahlia moved over to free up half of the driver's seat. Oh, no, I don't want to dirty the seat. I can walk to the river. It's covered in waterproof cloth. No need to worry. Ah, I see. Well then, thank you. When the man climbed up onto the carriage, he did his best to squeeze himself into the corner so their clothes wouldn't touch. Even so, the smell of blood was quite overpowering, and it was accompanied by a whiff of rot. The sooner he washed all this off, the better. Dahlia wished she'd brought some water crystals with her. All she had was the drinking water in her antiseptic water skin. Very useful, this waterproof cloth. You think so? No doubt Wolf was just making small talk, but Dahlia suddenly felt her heart swell with pride. The inventor of this waterproof cloth was none other than Dahlia herself. She had developed it while still in college. Vinyl and the like didn't exist in this world, and she had no way of creating it. She had wanted a water-resistant material in order to make a raincoat for her father. The experiment she'd undertaken to create it had been the first steps toward this waterproof cloth. After much trial and error, she had eventually perfected the method. One side of the material was coated with a mixture of powdered blue slime and a certain chemical, then a fixing spell was applied so the mixture would stay adhered to the cloth. With that, Dahlia's original waterproof cloth had been complete. For a while, her roof and garden had been completely taken over with all kinds of slimes hanging out to dry, the floor cluttered with bottles of the powder. The new cloth had sold like hotcakes to the point the adventurers had almost wiped out the area's population of blue slimes. If blue slimes had emotion, she was sure they'd bear a hefty grudge toward her. Oh, yes, indeed. When I first joined the Knights, we used to paint our tents and cloaks with wax. It was a job they gave to the new recruits. And it was quite tough. If you missed any spots, the water would seep through, so they used this thick cloth that would take plenty of wax. But that made it very heavy to carry, of course. Eventually, this new waterproof cloth came in, much lighter and no waxing needed. I see. I'm glad it was useful. Makes great raincoats, too. Ah, a raincoat's a kind of cloak with arms made of that waterproof cloth. Since we started using those, far fewer of us have had problems with heat rash. Before, if it started raining, we had to use leather cloaks even in the middle of summer. Heat rash, you say? Dahlia had never considered that when developing her invention. Yes, no matter how itchy you get, you can't scratch through your armor, and there isn't much chance to bathe out in the field, you know. It can disturb your concentration even in the midst of battle, so it's no laughing matter. This is clearly a more serious problem than Dahlia had imagined. It was nothing better than direct feedback from the people using your product to show you where improvements were most needed. The gears had already begun to turn in her head. How could she make the fabric breathable and, if possible, lighter while maintaining its waterproof properties? So that cloth would be even more useful if it were lighter and more breathable. It would be if someone could make it that way. Of course, it's still got to be durable, so I don't imagine it'd be easy. She had to factor in durability, too? This is going to take some experimenting, most likely with some new materials. She was getting absorbed in thought when Wolf spoke again. Please excuse me talking about myself all this time. Were you out here to do some foraging today? Yes, just seeing what I could find. I'm so sorry for getting in the way of your work. Not at all, I was checking out the area today. As they exchanged polite remarks, the river came into view. This wide clearing had long been used as a rest area for travelers. Dahlia found a flat spot to park the carriage, and the two of them climbed down. Wolf headed for the river's shallows and began to wash his eyes and face. It appeared that some of the dry blood was quite stubborn, and it took a lot of splashing and rubbing before the man finally raised his head. Dahlia handed him a towel. Here, use this. Thank you. He took a towel and dried his face before finally turning to face Dahlia again. Her breath caught in her throat. His short hair, previously matted with blood and dust, was now a glossy ebony, contrasting his pale, flawless skin. His features were incredibly fine. His nose was long and straight, lips thin and shapely, with thin, almond-shaped eyes framed by long lashes. His rich golden irises gleamed like pools of whiskey, dotted by pupils as black as midnight. Even including her previous life, he could easily be the most, or at least second most, beautiful man Dahlia had ever seen. While she wasn't attracted to him in the conventional sense, she would have happily hung his portrait somewhere in the tower. Oh my god. The smell of blood might attract animals, so I'll bathe here and wash my clothes while I'm at it, said Wolf, taking off his armor as he waded toward the middle of the river. At the sound of splashing water, Dahlia promptly turned her back. Dahlia returned to the carriage where she prepared some white water and grapes for the Sleipnir. Sleipnir were omnivorous, able to eat meat as well as fruit and vegetables. Dahlia had been told it would only need water this afternoon, but a few snacks would put it in a good mood and make it more amenable. According to the stable hand, this one adored grapes, so Dahlia had brought a large bunch. As soon as it spied the juicy black grapes, the animal's dark eyes opened wide and it stared at her intently, following her every move. It was quite adorable, really. Not only had it guarded her well today, but it had helped save someone's life, so she decided to give the Sleipnir the whole bunch. When the water and fruit were put down in front of it, it let out a whinny of delight. After getting what she needed from the carriage, Dahlia set about lighting a campfire on the riverbank. She brought along a bundle of firewood and a magical tool for fire starting, so it took no time at all. Once she checked the direction of the wind, she prepared spots for her and Wolf to sit across from each other at the fireside. On the other side, a little ways from the fire, she thrust two long sticks into the ground and strung a rope between them. It was a simple clothesline for Wolf to dry his clothes on. While enjoying the tranquil sounds of birdsong and the flowing river, Dahlia began to make lunch. She sliced a round, crusty loaf of bread, topped it with goat cheese, and placed the pieces inside the fire. Next, she skewered some cold sausages on sticks and set them near the flames as well. She had some dried fruit and nuts in a leather bag, but found herself short on dishes. A large leaf she found nearby served well enough as a plate. Luckily, Dahlia had brought more than enough food and wine with her today. Neither she nor Wolf would have to go short. She made it look as though she had more while trying to give the night as much as she could accept. Even in spring, bathing in the river must have been cold, Dahlia thought. She decided to heat the red wine, pouring it into a small pan and stirring it in a little honey. Wolf emerged from the river just as it was beginning to simmer. Dahlia didn't dare turn her head, relying on her ears alone as she spoke to him. If you'd like, you can hang up your clothes on that rope. You're welcome to wear that coat there until they're dry. It may be a little small on you, though. It's my father's. There was a rustle of fabric behind her. Then Wolf appeared, clad in the black coat, and sat down beside the fire. The hems were indeed too short for him, but it was all she had to offer. I truly am sorry to put you through all this trouble. It's nothing. Dahlia poured the red wine into cups and offered Wolf some of the bread and sausages. Just some bits and pieces, I'm afraid, but I hope it's to your liking. Thank you, it looks excellent. Realizing the well-born young man would probably be too polite to start first, Dahlia looked away and took a bite of the rye bread. The cheese on top had melted very nicely and was delicious with the hot wine. Being goat's cheese, it had a quite strong, distinct flavor, but it paired perfectly with the bread. Dahlia picked up one of the sausages, biting in without taking it off the stick. It was bursting with juiciness and exquisitely seasoned. The delicious mix of spices gave every bite a slightly different flavor. These would be ideal for enjoying with a jug of ale. After a few more bites, Dahlia stole a glance in Wolf's direction to find him digging in with an appreciative smile. It seemed the food was to his taste. She was relieved. Within moments, he'd polished it all off. It felt nice to see someone showing such appreciation for their food. I don't remember the last time I enjoyed a meal so much, Wolf said once they were finished. If he hadn't eaten in 2 days, she wasn't surprised he felt that way. The breeze blew gently as the two of them sat for a while, listening to the quiet rushing of the river and the crackle of the campfire. Dahlia poured Wolf a second cup of wine. He accepted it with a word of thanks, but she noticed as he drank that he was blinking constantly. How are your eyes? They don't hurt anymore. My vision's rather blurry in both of them, though. You'd best see a doctor as soon as we get you to the castle. Yes, I certainly will. Just then the breeze began to waft the smoke in a slightly different direction, and Dahlia glanced over at the makeshift clothesline. Thankfully the smoke wasn't blowing toward it. Wolf's dark gray clothes swayed slightly in the breeze. If only she could use air magic, she would have been able to dry them much faster, but alas, she had no affinity for it. As she looked away again, her gaze fell upon the battered armor lying on the ground. The shoulder pieces were missing, but the breastplate remained, and she now noticed its deep red color. It didn't appear to be merely blood. Sir Wolf, you aren't one of the Scarlet Armorers, are you? I am actually, he answered, quite casually. The Scarlet Armorers were a famous division within the Order of the Beast Hunters. Those who wore the division's bright red garb were the first to charge into every battle. The vivid color drew Wolf's attention, and those warriors often acted as decoys. Even when the Order was overwhelmed in battle and on the retreat, the Scarlet Armorers would be hounded to the last. It was a grim statistic, but the members of this division were by far the most likely to die in battle. I'm not the strongest, but I'm quick and agile. Diverting the beast's attention away from my comrades is what I do best. Oh. There was no sense of heroism in his calm smile. Even so, Dahlia was suddenly lost for words. A memory of the day her father died surfaced in her mind. It had been last year when the leaves on the trees were just a little greener. They'd eaten lunch together just like always, and her father had left for the Merchants Guild. By the time the news reached Dahlia that he'd collapsed and she'd rushed to the guild, all that was left of him was a lifeless body. It had all happened so suddenly. One moment they'd been talking happily, the next he was gone. But why was she thinking about this now? As her mind dwelled on the bitter memories, Dahlia cast her eyes down, staring into her cup of wine. Wearing this coat reminds me of that craze that was going around last spring. Craze? Dahlia repeated, taking a sip of her wine. Yes, I was in town one day and took off my coat in front of a woman, completely forgetting I wasn't wearing anything underneath. Oops. She must have thought I was one of those flashers. I thought I'd be arrested. A spray of red wine burst from Dahlia's lips. Even in another world, it seemed like the coming of spring brought all sorts of people out of the woodwork, including those types. Don't say things like that when people are drinking. Sorry, it just popped into my head. The young man laughed with a dazzling smile. Dahlia's noble, knightly image of Wolf had come clattering down in an instant. It always makes people so worried when they hear I'm a Scarlet Armorer. I do appreciate the concern, but it's not as dangerous a job as everyone thinks. You looked so sad just now, I wasn't sure what to say. Sorry, it was stupid of me. No, I overreacted. I'm not great at formality. I hope you don't mind. You don't need to be so polite either. Sure, Dahlia deliberately made her reply a little brusque. It seemed that her absurd story had been his way of trying to make her feel better. Tell me, are you interested in magical tools, Dahlia? I love them. I work with them all the time. Caught off guard by the question, Dahlia answered honestly before she could stop herself. Wolf looked pleased to have hit the mark. His beautiful golden eyes glittered as he looked back at her. All right then, there's something I want to know. I've never seen a civilian with one, but do magical tool makers ever make swords? I don't think so, Dahlia replied. The closest thing you'll find is probably something like an enchanted kitchen knife. It's blacksmiths who make swords, and I think enchanting is usually the work of mages and alchemists. In this world, people who engaged in the magical arts could be roughly divided into 3 categories. First, there were mages. Dahlia understood them to be like wizards, and they were generally gifted in offensive or restorative magic. The ones who specialized in offensive magic were often recruited into the army or became adventurers. Those whose talents lay in restorative magic might find employment in temples or also become knights or adventurers. There were a few mages who created magical tools, some of them even made a career out of it. Next, there were the alchemists. They excelled in using magic to create all manner of extraordinary items and substances such as potions, rare metals, and golems. Many of them had a knack for enchanting, thus they made magical tool-making part of their livelihood too. Finally, there were magical toolmakers. Their work was to skillfully fuse raw materials with magic to create various useful objects. They were generally the ones without an affinity for offensive or restorative magic, or whose magical abilities were relatively weak. Sadly, they weren't generally afforded the same esteem as mages and alchemists. Even scholars and casual hobbyists could be found crafting magic tools. In short, no one considered it a particularly special occupation. What kind of enchantments would you put on a kitchen knife? The most common one would be an anti-rusting spell. Ah, the self-sharpening one's very popular too, though. It'd be one of those two. Anti-rusting and self-sharpening, huh? They'd be useful on swords too. How is your sword enchanted? The swords we use usually have a reinforcing spell on them, not that it saved mine in the end. Oh, hold on, did you have a sword with you? Dahlia suddenly became worried. What if he'd lost it in the forest? It snapped off at the hilt when I stabbed the wyvern, so I just left it there. You were hunting a wyvern? Wyverns were a fearsome species of dragon. They were infamous for their sharp talons and tough leathery wings. Dahlia remembered the gruesome gashes she'd seen in Wolf's shoulder, a parting gift from his quarry, no doubt. Yeah, a red wyvern. Right after we killed it, another one appeared. We wounded it, then it grabbed me in his claws and flew up into the sky. The mages couldn't attack in case they hit me. The archers couldn't shoot either. Same reason. I'll be getting an earful once I get back to the castle. I'll probably need to write a formal apology. Wow, it picked you up in its claws? It's a miracle you survived. Well, I stabbed it in the belly as hard as I could. It dropped me pretty quick then. It was the fall that worried me more, actually. But I had a strengthening spell on me and the trees broke my fall, so I was alright. Sounds dangerous enough to me. Strengthening spells keep you from getting too bashed up, and we have a great team of healers. We hardly ever lose anyone. Hardly ever meant it did happen sometimes, Dahlia noted. But getting back to what we were talking about, have you ever seen a magical sword, Dolly? I saw the Ember Blade at the Merchant's Guild. Nobody could draw it, though, so I've only seen the scabbard. If there was one item that reminded Dahlia she was living in a world of fantasy, it was these magical swords. Various arms and armor were inhabited by mysterious spirits, holy energy, the souls of departed warriors, and so on. They were immensely more powerful than ordinary arms and often had peculiar magical properties. The Ember Blade had been brought to the Merchant's Guild some time ago to be sold. The scabbard and grip were both deep red in color and lavishly decorated with gold. Unfortunately, nobody had been able to draw the sword, so Dahlia had never seen the blade itself. It had gone to auction shortly after arriving and eventually sold for an incredible sum, 100 gold coins. After the uproarious auction, the buyer had been revealed to be a famous adventurer. The Ember Blade? Wish I could have seen it. Have you seen many magical swords? The one I see most often belongs to the captain of the Beast Hunters. It's called Ash Hand. Anything it pierces burns up in an instant and turns to ash. It's tied to the captain's bloodline, so it's been passed down through his family for generations. It's one of the most famous swords in the kingdom. The captain's the only one who can draw it. Anyone else gets burned if they even touch it. It sounded to Dahlia like a much more powerful version of the Ember Blade. She got the feeling Wolf was speaking from experience with that last comment. There are 2 other magical swords in the castle that don't have owners. No one's been able to draw them yet. I tried when I became a knight, but they wouldn't budge. Do you think it's down to magical affinity, or maybe some other special quality? From what I've been told, the swords in the castle can only be wielded by someone with a pure soul and a strong sense of purpose. I've got neither, so it's no wonder I couldn't draw them. Wolf chuckled, his air so bright and carefree. You know, I've never seen one myself, but I've heard there are swords in other kingdoms that actually speak to you. A talking sword? It'd be good if you were taking a long journey on your own, I suppose, or if you didn't have any friends. Dahlia, that's the saddest thing I've ever heard. Oh, maybe it could guide you on the road as well, she added quickly, remembering speaking navigation systems in cars and smartphone apps. I think you want a talking map, not a talking sword. He had a point. Maybe Wolf had an adventurer's mind after all. Feeling mildly curious, Dahlia decided to ask about other objects. Are there such things as talking shields or armor? I never heard of a talking shield. It's possible somebody could have one hidden away somewhere. As for talking armor, well, there's Dahlia. Don't think I'd want to wear one of those, though. Seen one before? The Dahlia, a living suit of armor with no head, was another one of this world's fantastical denizens. It wasn't a creature Dahlia would want to meet unexpectedly, but she yearned for a chance to observe one in safety. Just how did they work? What force was it that animated them? On one of our missions, we came across one in a cave. It warned us in this terrifying voice, "Turn back if you value your life." It was quite powerful too, but we had a high priest traveling with us. He exorcised it. 5 minutes, and it was all over. Just 5 minutes? I almost felt sorry for it, but what was it like, the Dullahan? Was there anything inside it? It was this big black suit of armor without a helmet. It carried a longsword. All of it looked very well made. There was nothing inside it, though. It was completely empty. Once the priest had purified it, one of the mages took it back to the castle. They studied the armor and the sword, but they couldn't find any clue as to how it moved. They were awfully disappointed. I mean, the Dullahan obviously had a spirit inside it, and when he exorcised it, that got rid of whatever the heck was making it move around on its own. I see. Dahlia understood the mage's feelings well. She would have loved to discover the Dullahan's secret. Was it driven by some unknowable spiritual force? Did it have some unique way of manipulating magic that was beyond human capabilities? Even if its remains were truly nothing but empty armor and a sword, Dahlia would have given anything for the chance to dismantle them and investigate every inch. She thought it'd be fascinating to discover what they were made from. If it were up to me, I'd be happy to show it to you, but she'd gotten lost in her daydream again and made him feel awkward. Scolding herself, Dahlia quickly shook her head. That's okay, it's fascinating just to talk about. It might even give me ideas for my work. It was then that she suddenly realized they were forgetting something. Volf's eyes needed to be attended to as quickly as possible. Now was no time to be sitting around and chatting. We'd better get moving. It's a fair distance to the capital from here, she urged him. Of course, sorry for talking your ear off. No, I got carried away as well. Dahlia made sure to completely extinguish the campfire before covering it with earth. She then tidied up everything she'd brought from the carriage so as to leave the place just as they'd found it. Volf's clothes were still somewhat damp, but so they hung them from the carriage where they'd catch the breeze. His armor they packed away in the back. Once they settled themselves in the driver's seat, Volf gave a big stretch. He hadn't slept since his escape from the wyvern, so he must have been exhausted. We'll be on the road for a while. You should sleep until we reach the city. I'll wake you once we're near the wall so you can change. I'm fine, Volf said with a little shake of his head. I think it must be because of the potion. I don't feel all that sleepy. Would you mind if we talk for a while longer? Not at all. As she took up the reins, Dahlia remembered the bottle of white wine she'd been drinking on the way here. When she opened the bag it was in, she found it had frothed up a bit from the rocking of the carriage. She wished she'd remembered it at lunch. She could have given all the red to Volf. Something wrong? Just some white wine I opened earlier. I forgot all about it. I couldn't have a sip, could I? She'd already given him water and red wine, but after 2 days without anything to eat or drink, it was quite possible he was still thirsty. Sorry, it's only my leftovers. You can have it all if you're still thirsty. It's me who should apologize. I'm drinking you dry here. It's just, white wine's my favorite. As he raised the bottle to his lips, Dahlia couldn't help but laugh at his honesty. The pair spent the rest of the journey deep in conversation about magical tools and weapons. Dahlia explained all about the various magic tools used by the ordinary citizens of the Royal Capital, while Volf shared what he knew of the magical arms and tools in the Royal Castle. It was great fun sharing their knowledge with each other and discovering new things so much that the trip went by in a flash. Dahlia stopped the carriage near the city gate so Volf could change into his clothes. Unfortunately, they were still not quite dry. Concerned that he would be cold, Dahlia insisted that he keep the coat on as well. In the end, Volf hadn't slept a wink throughout the whole journey. Perhaps Dahlia reasoned it was in the nature of a knight to always be wary of his surroundings, even while enjoying a good conversation. According to Volf, there was a building inside the castle gates with a permanently stationed guard. Volf would go there first and get the all clear before heading onto the castle. It made sense. They could hardly let a civilian drive a carriage right up to it. This would be where they parted ways. Just as she stopped the carriage in front of the building, rain began to fall. Volf climbed down from the driver's seat and began to take off the coat Dahlia had given him, but she quickly stopped him. Keep it on. Your clothes aren't quite dry yet, and I hate for you to catch a cold. It's made from sand lizard skin, so it'll wick away the rain. Oh, thanks. I'll borrow it then. Thank you for everything, Dahlia. You saved my life today. Can you tell me your address? I'll come and repay you afterward. There's no need, honestly. You beast hunters are the ones out there keeping us all safe. Think of it as a show of gratitude. At least let me buy you a drink. Was that an invitation to be friends? Dahlia had very much enjoyed talking with Volf. She would have loved to meet and chat with him again. However, even though she had good reason, there was the unavoidable fact that she deceived him by allowing him to believe she was a man. It was unfortunate, but it would be for the best if their acquaintance ended here and now. Say hello if you happen to see me in town. Then I'll have that drink. Dahlia replied more cheerfully than she felt. She knew that the chances of a knight like Wolf and her, a mere civilian, meeting again in this great city were infinitesimally small. What the fuck is that word? I guess very, very small. The downpour grew heavier. Wolf said something, but she couldn't hear. It was at that moment that another carriage drew up behind her. I have to get going, she told him. I'm blocking the roads. See you. She felt bad, but she took the opportunity to cut the conversation short and drove the Sleipnir on. Goodbye, Dolly. Only as he called out her name did his voice manage to cut through the heavy rain. As she drove away, the image of his beautiful smile lingered as though it were burned into her eyes. This day would be more fateful than she could know. The royal castle lay in the north of the capital, surrounded by a towering wall of white stone. It wasn't an opulent construction. It had been built with defense and utility in mind, giving it a distinctly modern feel. Wolf, thank God you're alive. Scafarato, you're safe. That's not a ghost I'm seeing, is it? As soon as he passed through the castle's great stone gates, Wolf was greeted by dozens of men from the Order of Beast Hunters, all of them seemingly oblivious to the rain. As soon as they saw him, he was mobbed, his fellow knights jostling and crowding around him. In the chaos, someone kicked him in the back of the knee. The Knights of the Order of Beast Hunters were made up of nobles and commoners alike. There may have been differences in their social standing, but fighting side by side and risking their lives with every mission forged bonds of iron between them. Their unity was no facade. Many of the men showed the same concern for one another as they would for their own families. Behind the crowd gathering around Wolf, a few knights and soldiers watched from a distance. A handful of maids and other women looked on too. It seemed all of them had come out to see Wolf's safe return for themselves. I'm so sorry for worrying you all, Wolf called out to everyone, several comrades still hanging off of him. It had been 2 full days since he'd been snatched up by the wyvern. Parties from the beast hunters had taken turns to search for him, but they had all but given up hope by now. Apparently, after the 3rd day, preparations would have begun for a hero's funeral. Wolf could only keep apologizing profusely. How did you manage to get back here? One of his friends asked, a hand tightly gripping his shoulder. Thanks to the potion from Dahlia, the wound that had been there had completely vanished. I stabbed the wyvern in the belly and it dropped me. You what? Wolf, you're crazy. What happened to the wyvern? I made sure it was dead. Then I used my strengthening spell and ran down from the mountain. Eventually, I found the highway and I met someone there who helped me. He even gave me a potion and drove me back here. Well, thank the gods for that. I really thought we'd lost you this time. Everyone's been worried sick, you know. Wolf's friend, a man with dark blue hair, sniffed loudly before raising his head with a broad smile. Anyway, you're safe now, and that's all that matters. Right, Sir Wolfred and a wyvern flying off to die like lovers. It's not even funny. When I saw you being carried off, that's when I realized lady killers have it tough sometimes. You can bet that wyvern was a female. The men roared with laughter at the ridiculous jokes. One after another, Wolf's companions affectionately patted him on the head and shoulders. We'll get word out to the search party that you're safe. Oh, does your family know yet? Not yet. Last they heard, you were carried off by a wyvern. They must be worried. I'll send a messenger to let them know you're back. Thanks, I appreciate it, Wolf replied. Only then did it dawn on him that he'd completely forgotten about sending word home. His mind had been full of other things. Well, you look all right, but are you really not hurt anywhere? It's just my eyes. The wyvern's blood got into them, and now my vision's blurry. I'll report to the captain, then go straight to the medical office. I'll shower after that, then get some sleep. I need it. He'd washed in the river, but there had been no soap. A faint smell of blood still clung to his hair. The same went for his clothes. Damn, I hope the smell of blood hasn't gotten into this coat. You can always get it cleaned in the castle. Hold on, that coat's not one of ours, is it? No, I borrowed it from the person who found me. He said it's sand lizard skin. Sand lizard? That's not what's on the back of the collar. Let me see it. Wolf's friend pulled the coat off of him and studied it with narrowed eyes. After turning it inside out and staring at the lining for a few moments, he let out a deep sigh. The outside, sand lizard, but look at this lining. This is wyvern skin. That's a real luxury item. If you're going to use wyvern, you'd normally put it on the outside where people can see it. Only the best for the Scalferatos, huh? I told you I borrowed it. Just where did you go before you came from the castle back to the castle anyway? Not that I blame you. If I'd had a woman, I'd probably drop in on her first myself. There is no woman. I'll thank you not to make assumptions. Just as the conversation began to derail, one of Wolf's comrades, who was from a merchant family, took a look at the coat. You better return this as soon as you can. It's made with finely cut pieces of wyvern hide held in place with enchantments. A coat like that doesn't come cheap. I see. Was it a woman who lent you this, Wolf? No, it was the man who gave me a ride back to the city. He said it was his father's. Damn. Well, don't be surprised if that father comes after you waving a knife. He couldn't have known how valuable it is if he lent it to you just like that. Maybe not. The somewhat hazy image of Dahlia's face rose into Wolf's mind. The carriage the man had driven had been drawn by a Sleipnir, not an ordinary horse. When he'd asked if they speak informally, Dahlia had obliged and seemed at ease. He had been knowledgeable about all sorts of magical tools. Wolf could only assume he was from a fairly wealthy merchant family. He had left without giving an address or taking a single piece of copper for his trouble. Wolf could well imagine the young man getting a harsh scolding at this very moment from the coat's owner, his father. The thought made Wolf horribly uneasy. Nobody except a noble would casually lend an odd thing like that. No, he said he was a commoner. Must have been a wealthy merchant then, or a relative at any rate. I didn't get his family name, but I got his first name at least. I'll ask after him at the merchant's guild. I have to thank him properly for what he did. You told him you were from the Beast Hunters, right? Yeah, I did. Well, then he'll probably contact you. I bet he wants to be friends. The man laughed and slapped Wolf's shoulder. I'll be glad if he did. I'd like a chance to talk with him again. Wolf murmured. He looked like a young boy in a daydream as he smiled gently. Nobody would have guessed that this was the same man who had been nicknamed the Bane of Beasts, the Black Reaper, and the Heartbreaker. His comrades were taken aback. They had never seen him this way before. Hey, Wolf, do you feel okay? Something's not right with Sir Wolford. Someone go tell the captain we're taking him to the doctor right away. Must be some kind of side effect of that dragon's blood, or maybe he hit his head. He's not himself. With that, Wolf was immediately escorted to the medical office. Oh, God, don't tell me he's got a crush on Dahlia. Oh, boy. Oh, wait till he finds out Dahlia was a woman. Oh, boy, that's going to be awkward. Because eventually he's going to find out that there's no one named Dolly unless they think he's talking about Dahlia in the Merchants Guild. With someone he goes looking. He's going to figure it out. And then there's going to be an old awkwardness. And I'll see you guys in the next one.